just mentioned, I'm from Edit, based here in Bath. So I'm head of media solutions. I've been working in the industry now for about 10 years. And most of that time has been spent with print media at the forefront. So yes, a print lover indeed. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. I'm not going to go into too much detail about sort of exactly what happens on a day-to-day and how we plan and buy the media. What I want to talk about is the physical item. We plan different types of print media. We've got, broadly speaking, two different types. Letterbox, so anything that comes through the front door, direct mail, door drop or partially addressed mail. And then inserts, so these are leaflets that go into third-party dispatches, magazines, newspapers. They can be anything from a single sheet through to sort of catalogues and more bespoke pieces. So because of the planning that we do across print media, we speak to printers all the time, because printed media is more than just the media. It's more than where this item is going to be seen. It's more than, is it the Telegraph or is it the Guardian we're advertising in? It's about the physical item. We all know that things that are felt and are touched stay in the mind a lot longer. And so actually the physical item, when you come to plan any printed media campaign, is exceptionally important. And so, as I say, we speak to printers on a daily basis. We need to understand what changes are happening in the industry, from paper price increases through to innovation, and how that's going to affect our clients, but also to work with our printers to find the best solutions for our clients. However, when I have these conversations with printers, it always starts with one question. How much have I got to spend? What is their budget? And it's always quite a simple question that is expected of a simple answer. Now, hopefully, I won't go to offend anyone here, but we all know that cheap isn't always best. I've been on a Ryanair flight and ended up in the wrong city. Did pay £17 for the flight, so I guess what can I expect? And I guess to use that analogy, I'm sure you would all agree that when it comes to print, cheap isn't always the best. So it's my job to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. And that's what I'm here today to talk about, is how we can all within the industry zoom out and look at the bigger picture. So what do I mean by this? Well, who is being targeted? So actually, are we talking to young generation? Are we talking to over 80-year-olds? Are we talking to busy business owners? Who is it you're targeting, so that you can make sure that you're tailoring what you're sending to them so that they're going to be interested and responsive? Now, I mentioned about where the item is appearing. This is quite important because we need to make sure we get some standout. So if it's going to be appearing on the doormat, how much competition is there? If it's going to be appearing in a parcel, well, actually, what else is in that parcel that we need to consider? Thinking about what else it's going to compete with, the footfall across the item, and also just the process to get it out into market. This is a really important one when we think about mail or printed media driving a response. What do we want recipients to do? Do we want them to call a call centre to ask for more information? Do we want them to go into a local store? It's really important to think about this, because what you then have on your printed item will determine the action we take. Even though in the marketing industry, we all think we know the tricks of the trade, we still don't want to have to do the thinking for ourselves. If I receive a piece of mail that has a map of my local store and a direction of how to get there with the opening times, I'm more likely to get there because I haven't had to make the effort and think about how I'm going to respond. Likewise, if you want them to call, make sure your call to action has the telephone number as the leading call to action. What are you selling? So this is a really important thing to consider, and this does start to tie in a little bit with budget. But if you think about it, this is the first time I've really considered budget in this. because what you're selling will impact how much you can spend. Are you selling a £5 mascara? In which case, yeah, you probably don't need to spend a hell of a lot of money on your print. But if you're selling a £5,000 holiday or a £50,000 car, all of a sudden your print format needs to deliver a hell of a lot more to be able to convince and convert people. So think really, what is it you're selling? Now, of course, this might be warm communications. So think about who your customer is and who you're talking to. So if they're a valuable customer, take a bit more time, send them something a bit more personalized, send them something perhaps slightly better paper thickness or quality, maybe with some foiling. Actually, if they've only ever spent with you once £10 and they're a lapsed customer, maybe you treat them slightly differently with what they receive. And this, of course, is really important. What will stand out to the recipient? Now, I know we're all a bit different because we work in the print industry, but I know that there are people out there who, when they receive something cool or a bit different on their doormat, they do stand and take notice. We've seen social media campaigns in the last 4 or 5 years from brands who have used scented paper, who have sent samples in the post. And actually, these things really help it stand out and for the recipient to not just pick up, but engage with the mail item or the printed item. But even more simply, this can simply come down to the format. So if we know that in a magazine, traditionally, people will be using an A5 2pp insert, well, actually, to go slightly under or slightly over that size will give you a little bit more standout. Or changing it from an A5 to a DL. So again, when you look at all the inserts stacked together, your one stands out a little bit more. So if you think about all of those different considerations, actually, that's what's going to deliver a successful campaign, whether that's for acquisition, for retention, or even just purely for engagement. Once you've thought about who it is the client is targeting, what you want them to do, you can then start to think about the format and the print specifics that will deliver against that brief. Then, and only then, should you ask for the budget. Because actually, in my experience, once you've sold somebody a fantastic print format that delivers on the brief and will drive response, they're more than happy to spend a little bit more to deliver against that. Also, we know you printers can usually find a way to get things to stack up for us. And the proof is in the pudding, as they say. I didn't think this slide would make me as hungry as it is. I haven't had breakfast yet, but I'm going to have some cake, I think, after this now. So here's a couple of examples from some edit clients recently. So James Wellbeloved are a pet food brand, and we trialed inserts for them for the very first time last year. We went with a double pop-out format. So on the left side of the screen, that was an undersized A5 format. As many of you will obviously know, that was a slightly more expensive format to produce than the one on the right. This was a sub DL size, and it just had a single perforation at the bottom. However, the double pop-out drove a 100% increase in response rate versus the single perforation. So even though it was more expensive, there was a 50% lower cost per acquisition using the more expensive print format. And actually, to go on to double pop-outs, I'm sure all of you on here have at least come across one in a magazine, on your doormat. It's a very, very successful format to use. And by doing this, you can often ask people to use the second discount either for a subsequent purchase or to recommend a friend, which is a great tool for acquisition. And actually, by increasing the double pop-out, you were able to get 14% more new customers than if you just used a single pop-out. So again, the additional cost of that extra pop-out really pays back if you're trying to get more than one customer from a single insert. And finally, even just thinking simply, it doesn't have to be anything fancy with your format, but think about what you're showing on a printed item, particularly if you have limited space and a tight budget. If you've only got an A5 2pp, you need to use your space really wisely. And we've shown through you working with retailers that if you increase your product range, your response can increase by up to 64%. It's simple. If you give people more things to see and to like, they're more likely to respond. So we're not talking here having a 100-page catalogue with a different shirt on every page, but simply increasing the range within a photo so that you can keep to a cost-efficient format. And then I guess this is the bit that really gets me excited as a marketer. And let's face it, it gets clients excited. And I think it's really important that we don't just think budget first, because budget doesn't get anybody excited. Budget doesn't make people want to go and explore the different and break down the boundaries. And we know that print has had a really tough time the last few years, and it's thought of as very traditional and a little bit stuffy. And that actually digital can do some really cool things, and experiential and out-of-home marketing is far sexier than print. But actually, you can get very creative in print, and it's just thinking outside the box, and again, thinking about those questions that I posed to you all earlier. I'm sure many of you will have seen the case study of the work that Edit did with Land Rover. Again, here it goes back to who the customer is. Very, very busy, time-poor professionals. And what are we selling? Well, I'm not in the market for a Jaguar Land Rover because of how expensive they are. We're talking tens of thousands of pounds as a starting price. So all of a sudden, a letter in an envelope just doesn't seem to cut it. This was where we then decided to think about technology integration and how can we make something smooth and seamless for the consumer. That's where the button pack came from. With a simple press of the start-stop button that is synonymous with the Land Rover, people were able to press the button to request a test drive. And using data and tech integration, the recipient would receive a phone call to book in a test drive at their local JLR test centre, and they would then further receive an email and a text message to confirm this. So yes, it was expensive, but again, if you think about the cost of a Land Rover, that's why we then saw things like 24-to-1 ROI, with over 100 Evoques sold from this mailing pack. So it really does go to show that thinking outside the box and thinking customer first can deliver great results. Now, I got to be honest here, and I should have researched this before I put the quote up. I have no idea who Norman Sailor Jerry Collins is, but I saw this quote and it just really resonated. And I'm sure it will resonate with all of you as well. That good work ain't cheap, and cheap work ain't good. And we don't have to be experts in the industry to know what looks good and what looks bad. We've all received things in the post that you can see straight through to the other side. But actually, sometimes just taking that bit more time to think about your customer, the client, and what is being required, you can really make something quite spectacular. Thank you very much for your time, and I will now hand you all back to Brendan.